All right, everybody. This is very exciting for us, and I'm sure for your ears. You know him from Barstool and beyond, specifically, pretty much anywhere and everywhere on social media, cracking you up and cracking wise. It's our pal, Joey Mulinaro. How are you, Pally?
Dameshek, great to talk to you, man. It's been too long. I think the last time that we chatted was the night our right now lowly Pittsburgh Steelers drafted one of the high points of the year so far. Old Pat Fryermuth. I remember that night. You hopped on my show, and that was very kind of you. So good to talk to you. Glad to be here.
Dave Muth. So really, if we just take the 30,000-foot view, things have been rosy. We talked to Cam Hayward that night as well. If memory serves, he's been dynamite. He's only added to his Hall of Fame resume. And then pretty much that's all we have to say. But we'll talk about the black and gold, the pro version of black and gold. And we'll see if nothing else here, Joey. I would really like to see if you and I can help the spirit of the Steelers fans out there, because there's a lot of people's angry, and dude, people's real mad. People want Tomlin to be fired. Roethlisberger, he's got to go, dude. Already should have gone 3 years ago and all that. But let's start with more ugliness for Dave Dameshek. Joy for you though, Joey. I'm talking about the Oaken Bucket. Muzzle tough to you. It is it's in West Lafayette there. You vanquished. I thought it was a little mean spirited after everything the Hoosiers have already been through to whip them the way you did. But, listen, we can't unring that bell. Are you the greatest Purdue alumnus of all time?
I am not a Purdue alumnus.
You're not?
There's the I would say my wife is the greatest Purdue alumnus of all time. And then right below her would be Neil Armstrong. And then Drew Brees.
So Armstrong, really? I didn't know Armstrong.
Actually,
all right. I can't really crack too much wise about that then, if they first man on the moon.
Oh, yeah. That's the old saying here in Indiana, Dave, is IU always, your Hoosiers love to brag about their 5 banners. We know it well. 5 banners in basketball. And then Purdue always comes back with the qualm of, you may have banners in your ceiling, but we've got a banner on the moon, as in what Neil Armstrong planted up there. So I don't really know. It makes the old frat guys at Purdue feel better, I think. But old Neil Armstrong, he's a Boilermaker.
Very nice. And what do you think about? I know you're wearing the LSU hat, Coach O. Can't ever take away 2019 from him, I guess. And now we get Georgia. I was just talking about it. Wouldn't that be great to see this Georgia defense against that LSU offense? But then it summons for me Joe Burrow thoughts, and now I can't like Joe Burrow anymore. What do you think, though? I thought it was very interesting timing on Coach Saban's part, another pal of yours, that in advance of the Auburn game, he must have known that they might lose that game, because he got awfully philosophical about the meaning of life and all that kind of stuff. Is that was that your read on it as the Saban whisperer?
That's a great point. I think, as we know, Saban is a genius and a mastermind, not only on the football field, but he knows how to manipulate the boosters, the folks around him, the AD, especially the Bama faithful down there now, Dave. I mean, he knew this damn well, and you called it. I mean, he struggled at Auburn. If you're going to say struggled in anything with Saban, at Auburn has been the place where it's been the worst. Kick 6. Couple of years ago, they had that weird thing at half where he was freaking out about, and they gave Auburn an extra second, and then Auburn ended up winning. So the times that Bama and Saban have been kept out of the playoff, it's been due to the Auburn Tigers at Jordan Hole Stadium. So I know that my man was, it landed perfectly for him on Thanksgiving, to where he could kind of use that as the facade for what it really is, was, hey, things may go awry this weekend because they have before. And let's just keep this in perspective, all right? These are kids. It's just a game. We've been in a pandemic for the last year, right? There's more important things out there than Bama football, even though that would be disagreed by a lot of people down at Bama. So, yeah, I think it was a genius move on his part.
I'm not. I know you're not a monkey here to dance for the listener. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. Saban, so pre-Thanksgiving, he basically sits at the head of a long table surrounded by Bama faithful, and he scolds them. That's how it played, at least, was that he was scolding everybody for wanting to win. This is a new look for Saban. Now, buzzsaw Georgia awaits him in the SEC title game. Do you think he doubles down now? And if so, what do you think Coach Saban is saying to his boys and to the boosters and otherwise right now?
Well, it's certainly going to be a challenge. Going to Atlanta always is, and a tough game against Coach Smart in Georgia. But what you got to remember is it's not about the destination; it's about the journey. When you're going on a trip and you've been to Florida every single year, the beach is fine, but where you make your memories is when you're on the car ride there, playing games, looking at license plates, having your music playing, the music you don't want, the music you do want. It's about the journey. So you're all going to get worked up and talk about how, well, we may not beat Georgia and we ain't going to go to the national championship, blah, 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 blah. You got to remember, it's the climb. It's not getting to the mountaintop. You get to the top of the mountain of Mount Everest, you can't breathe. When you're on your way up there, you got the adrenaline working. That's the fun part. That's where it all comes in. So don't give me this nonsense now about how we ain't going to beat Georgia and that's not good enough because this is Bama, because it's about the journey. And if you can't get that, then I don't know what to tell you, all right?
Woke Saban. Boy, he's really developed a new perspective on life now that his team can be beaten by Texas A&M and challenged by down LSU and down Florida. And
very challenged by down LSU, man. The Tigers had him. They had him on the ropes.
What do you think of that, by the way? This different standard, just because somebody came up with a clever phrase, it just means more. And so somehow we all have to buy that perennially that, well, whatever happens in the SEC, I guess that's just better. And so close games there, like they add to the greatness of the powerhouses in that conference. Whereas any other conference, the front runner gets challenged in a game. It's like, see, they're not that good. This different measure for this somehow has it now. Everybody suffers from Stockholm syndrome or Tuscaloosa syndrome or otherwise, and now feels like Alabama has some claim to being in the Final Four. Now, if they beat Georgia, certainly, but this jive that, hey, if they play Georgia close, they belong in, because we all know deep down they're better than Cincinnati or Oklahoma State or otherwise. How say you on this?
It absolutely, and that's just about what I was going to say, and you brought up there at the end, is what's really going to be interesting is if Georgia wins, 17-14 on a last-second field goal, and it's, kind of back, just slobber knocker, back and forth. I mean, you, me, anybody with a relative brain knows that even though I like Kirk Herbstreit a lot, I do. I like Kirk Herbstreit a lot. All those gentlemen on that stage and the committee, they're all going to be pounding the desk at ESPN, the worldwide leader, the Sunday following, saying, I just don't know how you can't put in a two-loss Alabama who would clearly, on a neutral site, demolish Cincinnati, who is unbeaten, who has won their conference championship, who's won every single game that's been put on their schedule. That is the goal of what you do. But I don't see how you can tell me that they wouldn't beat them. Like, that argument drives me absolutely insane. And Cowherd does it all the time.
Oh, good. I didn't know which side you were actually going to come
down.
No.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Cowherd does it all the time too. Like the whole on a neutral field. Okay. What about the 12 games leading up? What about the conference championship they have to be in to, and win? What about Todd McShay? He did the same thing, but with Ohio State the other day. On Sunday morning, he was just like, if it comes down to it, if it's a two-loss Ohio State team and an undefeated conference champion Cincinnati team, I want to see Ohio State because it's the four best teams. I'm like, and I quote tweeted it and I said, okay, 20 years from now, no regular season. College football is completely just these packs in Columbus, Ohio and Tuscaloosa and maybe USC now with Lincoln Riley out there and whatever happens in Clemson, but it's just these packs and they don't play the regular season. Everybody has gone to, wherever you're closest to. So now I got to be an Ohio State fan because my teams aren't playing because the Boilers and the Hoosiers aren't going to be able to make it to the college football playoff, right? Even Notre Dame fans, maybe you'll stick with that. You're going to have about 5 teams, and you just add up all the collective stars from the recruits that they have on their roster, and then there you go. That is year in and year out. You just build up to the Final Four, the stars based on rivals rankings or whatever it is, and you play those 4, and it'll be Bama, it'll be Ohio State, it'll be USC, it'll be Georgia every single year. That's
why are we going to bother though to have these young guys show up in August in the humidity for practicing and go through all the travel and everything else associated with the 3 months of the season? Why don't we just have everybody evaluate who had the best recruiting class? Because that's basically what preseason polls are based on, and the preseason polls dictate largely who winds up playing in the Final Four anyway. Let's just jump to that. We can save ourselves a lot of time and focus in on hockey or whatever,
Yeah, just neutral field. No home field advantage. Just go to that. Whoever on the neutral field after a month of preparation, that's what it's all about, because that's how the whole season has been played up to this point. Is Nick Saban has a month to prepare for everybody, and they play on a neutral field, and he doesn't have to go to Death Valley or anything like that. That makes a whole lot of sense. It's absolutely mind-numbing how, and I love college football. Me
too. It's the best. The aesthetics of it with the big, when you get close to the stadium and you can literally feel in your chest, you can hear the big bass drum, bum, ba-da, bum, ba-da, bum, and the whole stadium filled with one color except for the one section of the visiting team. And not all of it is the uniforms are better in college than they are in pro football, so on and so forth. Of course.
Hey, how about this? How about this? Even for me, just the fact that it's played on a Saturday gives it the slight edge over Sunday. And the NFL is great, but there's nothing like a 10 a.m. cracking a cold one, having your first food of the day, knowing that you got to kick off at 3:30. It's beautiful weather. It's Saturday. Don't got to work the next day. Anyways.
You're so right. Well, listen, that's a great point. It's why Thanksgiving is better than Christmas. It's because it's at the start of the holiday season. What is kickoff early on Saturday? It's the start of your weekend. That's Sunday. There's the black cloud hanging over you while you're watching the game, and it's fourth quarter. And believe me, there was no worse time for adolescent Dave Dameshek than realizing, as Pat Summerall was in the second half of calling the Cowboys against whomever on a given Sunday, was the dark notion that we've got only a couple more hours a weekend, then it's back to school. Yeah, not good.
You got to, the homework's creeping up on you. Your mom
starts. Yeah, I hadn't done it. I hadn't done the homework at that point. Maybe I would tend to it on Sunday night, more likely on Monday morning on the bus, half-assedly or otherwise. Bad memories. Now,
this is 60 minutes clock for me, Dave.
Was it?
That's when my mom was like, homework done? Then you're screwed.
I couldn't fully enjoy moving on up, with the Jeffersons. You watch the theme and it's great, but you're like, all right, we've got about 20 more minutes here. That was the magic of the George Michael sports machine. People attribute great powers. That was probably even predates you. You're so young, and Eddie Spaghetti. But that show, you would sit through it. It proved the power of how awful going to school the next morning was, because it didn't make a difference what was on. You were going to stare at anything. Wait, this is semi-relevant programming at 11:30 at night. I'm in. Whatever allows me to stave off sleep and waking up for school the next day. But yeah, I with the thing with the playoff, the way everybody knows that Alabama would smoke Cincinnati. Okay, fine. Put the Bearcats out there with Georgia. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen when you put Georgia on the field with any team? I mean, this different standard. And also the application of come on, Ohio State deep down is better. It's like, do you not like movies? Did you not enjoy Star Wars? Yeah, the Empire would beat Skywalker and company 9 times out of 10. The joy is when it doesn't happen. You have to allow. Do we hate underdogs now? Is that the message that we're sending to society here, college football? It upsets me greatly, as you can tell.
It does. Yeah, it does for me as well. Because you look and we haven't. We've had these examples in the not so distant past of an Alabama getting beat by a team that they shouldn't probably get. How about Utah in the Sugar Bowl, long time ago, right? But
I talk about that one all the time. Yeah, that was a huge piece of proof that you can put a good team. That Utah, Alex Smith, and they smoked Pitt. Pitt wasn't a great team that year, but they were a Power 5 team and all that. They whipped them, but good.
What sucks and how we got ourselves into this situation is honestly the first year of the playoff, because first year of the playoff, I believe it was a 2-loss Big Ten champion Ohio State that was hot at the end of the year, got in at the 4 seed, beat Alabama, beat the doors off Alabama, really, won the national championship. That screwed us, because then it's like it went from, looking at it to where if Ohio State gets in because they won the Big Ten championship, cool, and then they get their doors blown off Alabama, maybe it's a little different. But because they won the first year as the 4 seed, then everybody's like, well, that's the best roster. It's the best team playing the best at that time. And they set themselves up for failure with that, but they set themselves up for failure with just now that it's 4 teams, because then it's like, well, we don't have these automatic bids. So then with the automatic bids, then the objectivity gets out of it. And it's all just, it's a mess. Like, it's just amazing to me that a product that is this valuable, that like this much money goes into, that this many people watch and care about, can never consistently, literally back into the 70s, 80s, when they just had a newspaper vote on who the best champion was. Figure it out, guys. Like, I
like that just fine. I've had my arguments about that. I mean, but it really is. When I was growing up, if you gave me in NHL, in Sega 94, NHL 94, if I had the Penguins, it got to a point with my pals, it was like, you're not even allowed to play with them because there's no way to beat you. If you have 66 in Dameshek's mitts, it's over before it starts. Sure. Now, listen, I'm not proud of this. Am I a petulant ass? Sure I am. But once in a while, somebody would score a goal against me in the first minute or two, and I might hit the reset button. Come on. Because we all know that I'm going to win anyway, but why I want it pristine. I don't want that one against me in anything. So that was petulant. But the committee has to be better than I was. You understand? It's like, well, Alabama, but they're still better. There's no reset button. They lost the game. That's the flow of this season-long tournament. So it makes me crazy. Now, philosophically, you mentioned Purdue and the Hoosiers, as it happens, not playing, not in contention as far as I know for the Final Four. Michigan is with a victory. Yeah. Do you now root for Michigan to win that game and go to the Final Four, or do you root for Iowa to knock them off, very likely opening the door for Notre Dame? And you don't even have to get to that level of calculating. You're an Indiana guy. I obviously matriculated in Southern Indiana for 4 years. You're more dyed in the wool. I assume you don't like Notre Dame, but either way, don't let that even get in the way. Just philosophically, I get if you hate Notre Dame, you want Michigan to win to keep Notre Dame out of it. But in your gut, as a Big Ten guy, is it good or bad for Michigan to win this game?
Great. Well, yeah, for Big Ten, yeah, right? I mean,
no.
As a conference guy, no. I'm objectivity here. I'm taking it out. I'm excited that Michigan's in Indy this weekend. I'm excited that they'll finally, hopefully, get a chance to get in. Well, I know what you're saying. You shouldn't.
Wait, you're a Bengals fan now too?
I'm not a fan of that team. What I'm saying is that I don't want to see the door opened. I don't want Michigan to open the door for the committee to be licking their chops back there, doing the meme of Spice Adams, rubbing their hands together because they're like, oh, yeah, now that Michigan's out, give me a 2-loss Ohio State. Give me a 2-loss Bama. And then we find ourselves having Georgia, a 2-loss Bama, a 2-loss Ohio State, and then whoever, I guess Cincinnati, whoever gives a hell, whatever the last one is. I don't want that. I'm a big person that's like the whole leading up to your resume, your portfolio of what you've done, your product of work matters. You can't just do like we talked about where it's like, well, Alabama lost 3 games and they didn't make their conference title game, but Nick Saban, neutral field. I mean, come on. Like that doesn't make any sense. That is a terrible, terrible argument that should not be able to just be like, well, I mean, God. That's essentially what they're saying. Is
yes,
that a committee of people,
of course.
Committee of people who get paid a lot, who are very well off, who get to sit in a room and eat Kush Pizza and just hang out and talk about college football. Essentially, what you're saying, if that happens, is they get to sit there, lean back in their leather chair, and go, I mean, come on. That's the argument. That's not acceptable.
Of course, that's true. Listen, think about the things that you would eliminate from history if you took the Celtics played the Houston Rockets in the '86 NBA Finals. Did anybody in that moment say like, come on? It's Magic and everybody knows that the Lakers are better than the Rockets. Send them anyway. That'll be better. I mean, that's just these nonsensical arguments out, and it's the same people who couldn't stand when I was growing up, and I liked the polls at the end of the 20th century for the most part. There were some weird seasons where things weren't completely satisfying, but that hasn't been resolved. People are awfully unsatisfied with the results anyway. But yes, the idea that we should eliminate that because the same thing as the polls are too subjective. What are we? The committee is subjective too. Like, come on. Oh, come on. You know, the committee is supposed to eliminate this stuff.
And it would have been like, it just reminded me, it would have been like, you mentioned the Celtics and the Rockets. It would have been like, 05 when our boys in black and gold come into Indy, they punch the Colts in the mouth in January. Vandershank, does his thing and misses the field goal. It would have been the NFL playoffs saying, the Colts did beat the hell out of the Steelers in Monday Night Football earlier in the year. They had a chance to tie it, would have probably won in overtime. Sorry, Pittsburgh, you're going home. You're packing your bags and you're going home. Rest in peace, Ton Chilkin.
All right, listen. We've staved it off as long as we could here. Let's get to it. The main event now. You boosted the spirits, I hope, of college football enthusiasts. Now let's turn our gaze to one of the 32 teams. As John Facenda, I'll paraphrase him. I'll update it for the 21st century. But as you may know, he said once, there are 31 teams in the National Football League, and then there are the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, if he were to say that now, I think he would be identifying there are pro football teams that have the ability to stop the opponent from scoring every time they touch the ball. And then there are the Pittsburgh Steelers, because in 2021, things are awfully bleak in terms of defense. I feel like, Joey, and I've been saying this for a year, pretty much since the Cleveland game in January, which is now rivaled, not as bad as what happened in Pittsburgh in January, but this was pretty embarrassing stuff in Cincinnati on Sunday. But in between those two games, I keep saying over and over again, I get all the hand wringing about 39-year-old Roethlisberger's immobility and all that. The offensive line ain't great. It ain't up to snuff, and hopefully it'll round into shape before 2022. And Deontay Johnson drops the ball too much, and so on and so forth. But this team is predicated on being defense dominant. And when they fell apart down the stretch last year in that playoff game, and now consistently big plays, inability to stop anything, I feel like it's been until the Devin Bush emerging melodrama here now that he hasn't been good, even though they traded it up to get him. I feel like the offense and its struggles have obscured the real headline here, which is what's going on. This is a defense that has TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and so on and so forth.
That whole side of the ball, anybody who's a reserve, anybody who plays a lot, anybody who's a starter, really sans Cam Hayward, really, Keith Butler, Coach Tom, everybody should send their merry thank yous and pleasantries to Big Ben simply for the fact that he's 39 and that the media and the football world doesn't like him and never has. Because if it wasn't for that 39-year-old geriatric quarterback that we have back there, who was formerly Superman, who is now a shell of his old self, because that's just what happens. If it wasn't for that, to your point, this defense would be getting absolutely slaughtered. It's real easy for Stephen A. and everybody else to go on TV and to just punch the hell out of Big Ben. He's a big guy. He's not that likable to outside people. He's kind of cold, blah, 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 whatever. They go and they can punch him up. But Big Ben ain't been giving up over 950 yards in the last two games. And that's a fact. Those are factual numbers. 950 yards in the last 2 football games. To the point, Dave, like you said, I am more than surprised when that team gets off the field now. When that defense gets off the field, if they give up 3, I'm like, okay, we're working with something here.
And they don't turn you over hardly. I mean, they hardly ever
over.
do. I mean, the analogy I always make is it would be like if Golden State in their mini dynasty was like, yeah, they're just not making any perimeter shots. Like that was like, then their entire thing falls apart, right? It is supposed to be about the defense, and they're supposed to dominate you and heat you up. And look, I get I'm the first to say, I think maybe they win the Raiders game if TJ Watt doesn't get hurt early in that one, and then things look different. And if Roethlisberger doesn't get COVID, they probably survive Detroit. And then we're kind of talking about, I know it's crazy to make excuses like this, but then you're talking about 7-4. And if we're saying, hey, the Ravens have overcome injuries, that's a completely different structure there. You have an in his prime dynamic quarterback who's overcoming all those things. We knew in March that this Steelers team was not going to be carried by Roethlisberger. The defense had to step up before the offensive line would round into shape. Instead, the story has become, in part, the injuries. But really, I feel like, are you reading this the way I am? I think that Devin Bush is, the fans are coming down on him real hard, and that's one thing. But I feel like you can kind of read between the lines with like, hey, this isn't the Steelers way. You play hard for fourth quarter or through 4 quarters, and you got to fill your gap, and you got to get off blocks and make tackles. I think maybe I'm looking for trouble, but I feel like that's directed at 55. How say you? Because you watch Patrick Queen with the Ravens, and he's the sideline guy, and now JOK in Cleveland also effective against Lamar Jackson largely. And that's what Devin Bush was supposed to be. And what they wanted out of Devin Bush is kind of an irreplaceable skill set. And I feel like things are really imploding in a lot with a outsized percentage of the blame going at 55. How say you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's so much blame to go around. And unfortunately for Devin Bush, it does mostly fall on him. But I mean, you got a head coach that is, has a background in secondary, right? And that's where he made his hay with Tampa Bay. Won a Super Bowl there, got hired. Secondary, no splash plays, consistently over the years has their back somehow turned to the football while the football is being thrown at the player that they're defending. I mean, there's been no improvement there. Guys like James Pierre come in, stink it up. Terrell Edmonds is a first-round pick. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much to go around here. The lack of adjustments, like how a quarterback, Justin Herbert in LA, can run for 96 yards or whatever, and we still go into the second half. Hey, put up some numbers in the first half. Maybe have a spy. Maybe we bracket him a little bit. Nothing. It gets out every 3rd and 4.
Well, I agree that is legitimately a specifically disconcerting element of what's happened, not just even this season, but it's the inability in season to adjust to these things that are painfully aware to anybody who watches them week in and week out. Well, and or half to half, like you say.
So the Steelers team frustrates me a lot, and the people who follow this team frustrate me a lot because there's so much like mutually exclusive chatter going on with things. You can respect Coach Tomlin and the resume that he has and the career that he's had, and we get that he's never had any losing seasons, but also you can look at the last 5 or 6 years and say, something's got to give here. Terrible loss to Cleveland in the playoffs, embarrassment at home. Just got embarrassed, swept by the Bengals twice. Haven't had a playoff win in 5 years. You let down in the last 4 Decembers. You got beat by Blake Bortles at home in your last best chance really to win a Super Bowl when you had the prime 26, the prime 84, and the prime 7, the prime offensive line, and you blew it there. You can respect Coach Tomlin and what he's done and also say, what's going on? You got to get more out of your guys. There has to be more that you get out of your guys here. Same thing with the defense. Same thing with Big Ben. Big Ben. Hey, 7, you've been great. It's been a hell of a ride. You're a hell of a player, Hall of Fame player, 2 Super Bowls with you, a 3rd that you've been to, great memories. Also, you're a shell of yourself, and you're really hard to watch right now. And honestly, if we had a younger guy that could move around a little bit back there, not just be a sitting duck, maybe Duck Hodges, I don't know, things would probably be a little bit better off. The mutual exclusivity with this fan base of the people who follow drives me nuts. Like, you can have one hand over here saying this and two hands over here saying that, and it doesn't exist. It's either, well, you want to fire Mike Tomlin? Don't you see what he's done? Or, yeah, Big Ben sucks. He's terrible. He's old. Well, he is old, but like, he has been good for a really long time. It's just exhausting, man. I mean, there's just so much to go around. There's so much disappointment, so much lack of adjustment. I mean, what I saw on Sunday in Cincinnati, I was embarrassed for the first time in my life to be a Steelers fan. It was an absolute putrid showing of everything.
I'll do you one worse. That's not the first time I was embarrassed. As you mentioned, the Jacksonville playoff. I mean, the playoff game, the Steelers were significantly better as well as that defense was playing. They got embarrassed, and it was the exact same first quarter against Cleveland less than a year ago. Now this one, and everybody in the NFL these days gets blown out at least once. The Cardinals have been blown out. Tom Brady has been. The Patriots have been. The Bills have been. So the Steelers aren't unique in that regard. And I am willing to give them some latitude in the vacuum of 2021. I don't think if you hook Tomlin or Colbert or anyone up to a lie detector that they would say, yeah, I think this is a Super Bowl contender if things go just right. I think they were trying to thread the needle that the 2015 Broncos were. Get decent play, get 3 or 4 big-time plays out of your Hall of Fame quarterback and let the defense dominate. And the defense hasn't held up its end of the bargain. I think they knew that this was a transition year. I guess if there were anything to change, if you had one move, if you were in the seat of Kevin Colbert for this past 10 months, what's the one move you would have made? Forcing Roethlisberger out, even though he indicated, I'm coming back, guys, and so you owe me a certain chunk of loot, and I'm going to play. There was no way around everybody's fantasies about they should have purged him. I'm not sure exactly how you do it without, especially colored by how AB left, Palomalu left, Lev Bell, now Melvin Ingram, James Harrison. If you push your franchise QB out the door against his will, that takes on a real ugly tone to it. I think, 2020 hindsight on where the cap landed and everything, if they would have signed a guy like Lindsley to play center, who instead landed out in Los Angeles for the Chargers, I think that would have set things up in a completely different trajectory. You drop a vet right into the middle of the offensive line, but you could also sell me on Steven Nelson re-signing instead of rolling with James Pierre. How say you? Or make a different draft pick in the first round if you wish.
No, because I'm not about people want to come down hard on Najee, and I'm not with that. I mean, it's the situation he was landed in. There
are enough defensive players already coming down hard on him because no one blocks in front of him.
If Najee, everybody wants to talk about old James Conner and what he's doing in Arizona. If Najee was drafted to Arizona somehow, he'd be an All-Pro. I mean, sure. That's great for James Conner. Again, you could be happy for James Conner, good deal. Wasn't working in Pittsburgh. Wasn't going to work in Pittsburgh, right? So you had to get Najee Harris. I am tired of this franchise as it currently sits being completely strangled by the ending of this Roethlisberger tenure. I get that he is the franchise. I get that he's been the franchise. I get that, for the last 17 years, you've been back to the Pittsburgh Steelers because you have Big Ben back there and you have a chance. But if you just in the way I'm looking at it more and more, I'm just I feel like Colbert and Tomlin and everybody, even, the Cam Hayward, I feel like these guys are just being held hostage by Big Ben, just not wanting to hang it up. Walk out, man. Walk out when you're, instead of that Batman line. Sometimes you either you die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I mean, he's bordering on that, man. How tired are folks at Pittsburgh or the Steelers Nation? How tired are they going to be of watching this really sad showing of this guy who's been Superman for us for so long just crumble down the stretch? It is really shaping up to be a very, very bad ending with the schedule that the Steelers have.
I agree with that.
team is playing with the absolute just lack of life and everything, you're looking at 6-10-1, Dave. Maybe right now, 6-10-1.
If that happens, I am not big on, just generally speaking, because I'm a great guy. I don't advocate to fire other human beings and have them go jobless and all that. But specifically with this is a classic sort of like, they got to get rid of Tomlin, dude. The locker room don't respect him no more. They're tuning him out clearly and all that. What's the answer? The same thing I would say about Roethlisberger. If he's going to say, I'm coming back, and I hear you on people don't want to see it and it's uncomfortable. It's watching Ali when he had the mustache in the twilight of his career. That's the equivalent of Roethlisberger kind of limping around instead of shedding 300-pound men with the greatest of ease and all of that. There just wasn't a solution. I think Colbert and Tomlin and everybody else and Canada and everybody else understood he's coming back. With this is what we have to do. I hear all your stuff going forward. I do think that, it's bad early returns on the last chunk of the season that Tomlin made a big deal about. Like, we're approaching this like this is a significant game in our locker room going to Cincinnati. We're not going to ignore that. We have men ready to step up. Standard is the standard. And then to throw that stinker out there, I don't know what you do after that fails, how platitudinous one can get to turn things around. Unleash hell in December. I'm sure Patrick Mahomes is laughing at that notion. Lamar Jackson is giggling right now thinking about oh yeah, unleash hell on me, Coach Tomlin. We're terrified over here in Charm City. What do you think though? I really am interested to see if they can turn this around at all, show any signs of life. And if you're right, they very well could be playing in Baltimore in the last week of the season, trying to break a 5-6 game losing streak. It's all grim. Let's instead talk about a guy who you're high on, or in fact, give me the answer for who you would like under center. There's talk of Kenny Pickett. He might have played too well for the Steelers to be able to draft him. A nice Joe Burrow-esque type story, though, going back to the homeland and all that. If he could actually just stay in Heinz Field put his feet up all through spring and summertime and then just put on a black jersey instead of a blue one. That's an answer. Matt Corral is out there. Carson Strong, Malik Willis, a lot of good college names. Or would you rather them go after? I think this is going to be the all-time juiciest offseason for big name free agent QBs. I think everybody knows about Aaron Rodgers. Russell Wilson is legitimately in play. I don't think Baker Mayfield. I don't know that the Browns can bring him back.
What are you thinking about Russ? Do you have inside source or do you just have a feel?
I think it makes sense. I think he wants to win. I think he would want to go to a stable place. I think he would look at the pass catchers available to him. He has succeeded with a good defense. Allegedly, that's what the Steelers are supposed to be next year. They'll be expected to be that again next year. It makes sense to me. I can also see the Cleveland Browns going hard after him. Also, Washington could do it, and New Orleans. Russ loves Sean Payton and loves Drew Brees and all that. That also makes sense. But Derek Carr could be in play. I can't wait to see what happens with Baker Mayfield. For all of his ads, we were laughing last week. I don't know if there's ever been a guy who has had this level of endorsement loot and could be conceivably, in a couple months could be like, well, nobody's going to pay that guy to be their starting quarterback in the NFL. Like maybe Houston, but who really is going out of their way? If the Browns decide we took our shot here, Bake, but we're not giving you the long-time deal, then what? Is Baker Mayfield destined to be a backup? That's a real possibility. And I don't buy that the sky is falling and in the age of free agency, it's going to be a 10-year period of waiting for the next guy. If your personnel guy is good at drafting or bringing in the right free agent, it's going to be a very short time on the shelf. You saw what the Patriots have done, turning things around real quick. You bring in the right guy. The Rams have mostly succeeded bringing in a high-profile guy. I think it's as easy as that. The trick is to not miss on the draft pick if you do that. If you pick the wrong guy, if you're the Jets and you take Sam Darnold, well, then you're screwed. But if you're, short of that mistake, and it's a sizable one, I don't think that doom awaits any fan base out there because their big name quarterback is about to move on, whether it's Seattle, Pittsburgh, or otherwise.
Yeah, I know. I'm with it. It will be fun, and that's why we're kind of at this weird point right now, because it's like, okay, Kaboli, our guy Kaboli sent out, I thought it was a very spot on tweet this morning. He was like, this may be the most important, but besides Super Bowls or whatever, you look at regular season, this may be the most important game in the tenure of Mike Tomlin, because all of a sudden 5-5-1 arch rival coming in. If the Steelers lay another stinker like they have the last 2 weeks at Heinz Field to Baltimore, I mean, then everything hits the fan. Then you're really looking at 5-11-1, 6-10.
Home field disadvantage. The Boo Birds will hit them hard if they're running off the field at the end of the second quarter and it's 24-3 or whatever. Ravens, it's going to be unrelenting, and there will be a fair amount of provincial noise calling for Tomlin's head. I suspect he'll survive no matter what, but
I think so too, but they should be. I mean, if that's the case, if it's another 21-3, 24-10, just pitiful, lifeless.
That's right. I agree with you about it. That's fair. It's the nature of it's not losing close games, and man, they could have beaten the Chargers and it was so close. And maybe if Minka, the block field goal counts, who knows what happens in Lambeau.
Yeah.
Getting humiliated in the fashion that they did. I mean, and it was fluky that they got back into the Chargers game because of block kick and a block punt and everything else. But that really salvages it being even worse right now. They don't, get a couple of fluky bounce off Cam Hayward's helmet and a block punt. Then they would have gotten housed in 2 straight. And you're right. I mean, it's hard for me to make a case that that all losses aren't equal. That this will start to, there'll be mounting evidence that, boy, this guy's lost the team. And if Devin Bush gets sideways, like I fear he might, this is all too sad. I want to.
I got to follow up on a couple things, because that Chargers game, literally, they scored at will. They go into Denver next week in Vic Fangio. They struggled getting up 14 points. Looked like a JV team compared to, looked like a freshman team compared to.
I thought that was going to be their launching pad. As it just turned out, the Steelers have become everybody's mulligan. Yeah. Just like, oh yeah, we get right when we play them. But now back to reality.
Right.
Now we got to play the Denver Broncos. It's embarrassing.
Exactly, right? Come on. But the quarterback situation, I mean, Jay Glazer has been on very public about, his relationship with Mike Tomlin. He's reported multiple times. Tomlin doesn't want to start over. You don't want a rookie quarterback. Okay. So, if you're taking it at that, heading into 2022 winter, into the draft season talk, in the free agency, if we're taking it with that, then it's like, okay, are we thinking then we're not going to draft, but are we going, the Jacoby Brissett, Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Mariota bunch to kind of hold over until you get that guy? Or are you going balls out and you're laying something on the table for Russell Wilson? You're laying something on the table for Aaron Rodgers or one of those guys, because we've talked a lot about Devin Bush here today, Dave. But I will go back to this. I've seen a lot on Twitter. I've seen a lot on people writing about it. Well, I don't see the Steelers really trading up a lot of draft capital to go get their guy. It's just not the Steelers' way. You traded up over 10 picks to the top 10 to get an undersized inside linebacker because you thought he was going to be the key to changing your defense. Don't give me this, we don't do that. That's not how we do business out here. You did it for a guy like Devin Bush. If you're not going to do it for a quarterback, then you need to just clean slate the entire upper management, because that's a joke.
It's hard for me as a, born on the banks of the Three Rivers. You're born with a hose attached to one of your shoulder blades. Mine happens to be on the left. Kenny Pickett is a Jersey native for all intents and purposes, though. A lot of people on the banks of the Three Rivers rightly see the narrative to correct what they did wrong in the early 80s, not taking the local kid Marino. There's that element. My dad has
mentioned that numerous times to me.
It does come though with the stink of before Kenny Pickett ever puts on a pro football. If he played for the Steelers, it'd be like, Dade, he got to be like Marino. Like, well, Marino was one of the 3 or 4 best in the history of people. So don't put that on the kid before he ever plays if he wound up in Pittsburgh. But very easy for me to get excited about the storyline of Kenny Pickett moving from the pit locker room into the Steelers locker room. To me, I know it sounds uninspired, maybe even laughable, but Marcus Mariota and then draft a kid in the first round, and that combo to me would get it done. And if you can get Russell Wilson, great. And I think it's plausible that you could do that. But I do have to ask you to dance again in our bizarro world where the Bengals now own the Pittsburgh Steelers for decades, literally, since Collinsworth has sat up in that booth. He always has a chip on his shoulder, and to his credit, he kind of wears it. Like, I got to tell you, Al, the Steelers, they just own us. They just own. When he's not swooning over Lamar Jackson, by the way. It's kind of weird to watch the game when, first of all, I watched Gary Danielson on Saturday just swoon over Bryce Young. Like, this young man, this like, hey, he has 3 points against Auburn. They're not a world beater defense. Like, this is the guy who has to get the Heisman Trophy now. And then you watch Sunday night, like, look at Jadeveon Clowney. He just doesn't know what to do, Al. Like, what's this guy? There's no solve code. There's nobody can figure out what to do with this guy. It's like, he has 13 points against the Browns. He threw 4 interceptions. Like, this is it. This is the gold standard of what every team now crazy. Like, he's redefined what a quarterback, what you want on your team in pro football. Mike or Al or whoever's sitting next to me. They're like, I get that it's exciting what he does. It's like, whoa, I wouldn't be able to imagine that guy would break my ankles. Like, oh, okay, but are they going to win in January doing it this way? My
favorite line from the Cleveland Baltimore game on Sunday night was when I think the McMillan or Raekwon McMillan, the D lineman for the Browns. He was running to the sideline because Lamar was doing his thing, and Lamar kind of stepped out, and then he bumped him, got the 15 yards. And then Collinsworth's like, don't you just get the feel that it's like a kid with an ice cream truck? I mean, they don't ever get him. So once they get there, they don't know what to do with the guy, Al. So they just knock him out because they're so excited to finally get their hands on Lamar Jackson. I mean, I really think that's what it's like. Like, he busted out an ice cream shop. I was like, oh my God, dude, what are we talking about?
He really does. He clearly is one of those people, and I really do enjoy his work. But I do think he definitely writes stuff down before the game that he wants to say, and whatever evidence is on your television does not have to match up. Or he's like, Patrick Mahomes makes a throw like that. Like, what are you going to do? Like, this is all the Chiefs offense needs to get going. It's just a one play like that. It's like, we're in the fourth quarter and they're struggling against this bum team they're playing. But, like, you're still swooning over this. You're allowed to identify that this stinks, what you're looking at. But Collinsworth is now looking at a world where, after all these years of conceding, like, the Steelers own us. They're a bully and they beat us. I'd like to think that he's about to get really passive aggressive and start pitying the Steelers and counseling the Steelers fans. Can I put you on the spot to sort of address the AFC North and the Steelers and the Bengals and all that as Chris Collinsworth?
Boy, I'm not too used to this, Al. I mean, finally, the Steelers knowing how I felt all those years in Cincinnati. I probably would have played longer if I wouldn't douse myself in Skyline chili after the Steelers came in and just blew our doors off. I mean, it's just year after year. It's like when you have your big brother and he just continues to just put your face in the dirt, and then you hit puberty and you get a little hair down there, and finally you buck up and you decide you're going to be done with it, Al. And that's exactly what we're seeing with the Bengals right now. Changing of the guard in the AFC North. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, Joe Burrow taking old man Roethlisberger down into the blocks and making baskets over him and beating him in first 11 for the first time in his life. That's exactly kind of what it feels like. But We've kept you way too long, Joe. You're the tops. We appreciate you making time for us and are pleased as punch for all your success, man. And like I told you before, you really filled a time as we get well, not away from COVID, since I don't know if you heard, there's a new one now, but
yeah,
you really did do a great service for society in those first few months, especially when we were all like, what do we do now? How do we fill our day? There was always, it felt like, at least one nice video up there to laugh at that you were providing our eyeballs. And so we're thankful for that. Continued success, man. And, your success now becomes more important since we can't lean on the Steelers' success. But who knows? So listen, we beat them birdies, and then things ain't like you got the Chicago Bears in 85 Bears ain't playing, dude. It's them birdies ain't that good. Bronze is done. That's a win. That. We'll beat them.
Dave, thanks, man. It's God, this was a very needed after Sunday's debacle, a nice little therapy session here. And I'm sure, once it comes to springtime and free agency and the drafts, we'll have plenty to, as you say, kibitz about. And I would love nothing more to hop back on, man. So I really appreciate the kind words and you being a mentor to me. I really do. It means a lot. So thanks.
Oh, please. You need no help from anybody. But yes, anytime, let's count it as a date for spring, if not before. If somehow, maybe you know what? Could be a home game in January in Pittsburgh. If there is, I say here and now, we meet up at it. Right?
Let's do it.
Hey, we can reel off 5 in a row. They were the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Unleashing hell, man. Eddie, good to see you too, dude. Sorry about the Giants.
See,
we're all there together, bro. We're all
They're
there.
in playoff contention. We can't make fun. And he's a Notre Dame fan, and he's going to wind up in the playoff when it's all said and done. By Sunday night, he's going to be laughing at us when they're in the playoff, right, Spaghetti?
I don't think so. I mean, I do feel bad that your Steelers are descending while my Giants are ascending. But no, I think Oak State will still get the nod ahead of Notre Dame. And I'll be a fair Notre Dame fan. I do think that Oklahoma State does deserve it over them. But that's the craziness about college football.
What if Baylor wins? Michigan loses. Notre Dame is there. Is it Notre Dame over Baylor?
I think Notre Dame would definitely. They need Bama to lose to Georgia in the title game. I think Bama's bad win versus Auburn. Actually, I don't think a 2-win Bama will get, and especially if Georgia beats them by 2-3 scores. I think it's gonna be tough. And then we need an Iowa win versus Michigan in the Big Ten championship, and then you need Baylor to somehow beat Oklahoma State in the Big 12, which I'm not feeling too great about any of those matchups. The only one I feel good about is Georgia winning, but even then, I still think Oklahoma State will get in before them, which is fine. It is what it is.
I don't care about any. Just please, Georgia, for society, 3 touchdown win at least over Bama. Put an end to this nonsense and let Saban walk the sands all off season and ruminating about the meaning of life. That'd be fine by me.
Real quick, what's going to happen? I've seen some projections. What's going to happen here if Notre Dame and Kenny Pickett and the Panthers meet in the Fiesta Bowl?
What? I haven't heard that rumor. Let's get it on, Spaghetti.
It seems like the Fiesta Bowl is where Notre Dame would head up if they don't make the Final Four. But look, it's been a good story. Notre Dame is one of
the Kenny Pickett story. I agree.
I think Notre Dame they'd be running into a buzzsaw right now. They're playing as good as football as any team in the country. So that's my honest opinion.
You on it with a buzzsaw? What do you mean? So you're saying now
Notre Dame's been great. Notre Dame's been awesome lately.
What do you think the line would be on that?
Notre Dame would probably be favored by, I would say, over a touchdown.
Oh, they would not. Do you think
so.
That's true, Joey? They would not be favored.
7.5.
Over
Notre Dame Pitt. Hey, Dave, on a neutral field, right? Neutral field. Brian Kelly over who's your boy out there? And who's leading the charge for the Panthers?
The Deuce, Pat Narduzzi.
Pat Narduzzi. Brian Kelly, Narduzzi, neutral field. I mean, that's at least a touchdown there, Dave.
All right. Well, then I'll see you both then, I guess, in Arizona for the Fiesta Bowl. I'd be more than happy to see you out there. You're the tops, Joey. Keep it up, man. Appreciate all the time, pal.
Thanks, buddy.